Hey, JB here, the Wolf of Wall Street in the Wolf's Den, and you want to listen to this upcoming podcast very carefully. I have an awesome guest here. It's a bit different than usual. This is a guest here that's a very accomplished businessman, but has dedicated his life to biohacking, meaning helping you feel better, have more energy, just living a more empowered life by really having shortcuts to more energy, more clarity, more confidence, and just living a longer life, and a more fruitful one at that. His name is Dave Asprey, the founder of Bulletproof Coffee. You might know him well from using his products, listen to his podcast. A very, very well-schooled man, brilliant guy, and also a very humanitarian at that. And I was really impressed. One of the most impressive podcasts I've ever been on. Where to me, I was like, wow, I was like really hanging on the edge of my seat. So you do not want to miss this podcast. It's long. Stay tuned now. I'm going to go right to it. Quickly, a word from our sponsors here, and then let's get to Dave Asprey. It's a really, really cool podcast. You're going to be loving this. All right, here's the deal. As America gets back to work, you need every possible advantage to succeed in the new economy. The bottom line is that smart companies run on NetSuite by Oracle. This is the world's #1 cloud-based business system. NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, your HR, your inventory, e-commerce, and everything else you need all in one spot. And let me just tell you something. If you're not on top of your numbers, then your numbers are going to be on top of you. Whether you're doing 100 million a year, hundreds of millions a year, $1 million a year, NetSuite lets you manage every penny with precision. Bottom line, you'll have the ability to compete with anyone, work from anywhere, and run your whole company right from your phone. You want to join 20,000 companies, 20,000 who trust NetSuite to make that happen. Listen, NetSuite surveyed hundreds of business leaders and assembled a playbook of the top strategies they're using right now as America reopens for business. You need to watch this. You need to see this. So receive your free guide. It's called 7 Action Businesses Need to Take Now, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/wolf. That's netsuite.com/wolf. Listen, you know I don't endorse a lot of companies, right? This is one I believe in. You want to check this out. Listen, Larry Ellison, Oracle, business genius, NetSuite, best of breed software by a country mile. So if you're in business and you don't at least check out these 7 strategies that you need to take right now, actions, come on, what's the worst that could happen? At least go check this out. See what the smartest business people in the world are doing right now to maximize this rocket ship up we're about to witness after coronavirus. You need to check this out. So again, one more time, netsuite.com/wolf. That's netsuite.com/wolf. You want to do this right now. All right, so I got Dave Asprey right here, and we're going to get right into it. Dave, how's it going?
Jordan, it's going really well.
I want to get right into it with biochemistry and neurosciences, because that's a subject we both love. Listen, you're a guy that's done a lot throughout your life. I guess before we can really talk about biochemistry and neurosciences, there's one thing that you've said here that I think is really cool. It's about this, because it'll give you time to really perfect all these neurosciences. You said you have a goal to live to 180 years old. Is that true?
That is true. At least 180. I don't want to shortchange myself.
Explain that to me, because I'd love to, because I'm starting, honestly, Dave, I've been feeling a little bit nervously, because I'm saying, wow, I'm getting up there now, and I'm starting to think I've lived more than half my life, maybe, not by your standards, and I still think like I look really young, I feel really young, I'm nowhere nearly finished giving the value I want to give to the world. I think I'm just hitting stride right now in terms of that whole thing. And I wonder, tell me about that, because I'm intrigued right away.
Today, we know someone can live to 122. And they did that starting before we had cars. World War I was fought on horseback when they were alive. There were no antibiotics. They didn't know anything about vaccines. They didn't know about DNA. They didn't know about mitochondria. They didn't have the internet. You had to use gramophones, no radio. And they made it to 122. If we can't do 50% better in the next 140 years, it's because an asteroid hit the planet. Straight up.
What about the issue of telomeres and this idea that, we're somewhat programmed to not live past a certain age based on the divisions of cells and how mistakes start adding up, and those telomeres are almost there as a protective mechanism against, cells dividing for too long, so just the genetic information gets garbled over time?
There are 7 things that are the cause of aging. And my last book was called Superhuman, New York Times list for a couple of weeks. And I went really deep on this. I've run an anti-aging nonprofit group for about 20 years, and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of top experts on Bulletproof Radio, my podcast. So I go deep. And when you see Harvard professors willing to say, I'm putting my tenureship on the line to say we can reverse aging in cells, they're not messing around. And so in the book, I talk about 7 pillars of aging. And these are not just the one thing you have to do to live a long time, just like you want your car to last. What's more important, changing the oil or the tires?
Fair point.
So telomeres are one of the 7.
Multidisciplinary approach here.
It's not enough. Yeah.
Tell me what the 7 are.
You've got telomeres, which is a good one. You've got buildup of gunk inside the cells. You've got buildup of gunk outside the cells. You got stiffening of the cells. You've got loss of stem cells. And I wasn't counting. Was that 7?
I think it was 4 or 5. That was 5, I think.
That was at least 6.
Let's do it again. Telomeres, gunk inside, gunk outside, stiffening.
Stiffening, stem cell loss.
Stem cells lost 5. I think it was 5.
Oh, and then we've got senescent cells or zombie cells.
Senescence, right?
Yep. And then
That's 6.
mitochondrial. Yeah, and then there's mitochondrial decline.
Okay, fair enough. So for mitochondrial decline, would you say NAD is the correct treatment for that?
It's one of the correct treatments. If you look at this, you need to be able to be really good at turning air plus food into an electron. Mm-hmm. And NAD helps you carry the electron once you make it. But it turns out something like a ketone, which you can get to Bulletproof Coffee, put modern ketosis on the map. The oil that's in there called brain octane converts to ketones. And it turns out they have more electrons than sugar-based or carbohydrate-based foods. So that's one way you can do it. And there's many other things around consuming good fats, which means ditch the seed oils. You do that, it takes about 2 years to reshape the fatty droplets that make up the membranes in your body so that you're made up of the right things that have a high performance battery instead of a low performance battery.
Is there in a certain order in which you need to go about doing this? So for example, there are 7 things, but typically, there's like first things first. Like we need to, the first thing you have to do is you got to clean the sort of frame first. Then is it like a big picture to small picture? What's the order in which you go about? Like, let's say, because I'm very intrigued with this, because I'm getting to the point, I want to live longer. I do, right? And what's my first step?
It turns out you've got to do all 7, but there's an ROI involved. And I'm sure those are probably your 3 favorite letters. But the way you look at your health and your longevity is not in dollars. You look at it in energy. So if I was like, there's one thing you have to do every day that's going to make you live a very long time. And I said, yeah, but it takes 2 hours and it sucks the life out of you. It tastes bad and you hate doing it every single day. You're like, man, I don't know if I really want to do that. And also you won't really feel good when you're done.
So I guess it's quality of life. It's life expectancy times quality of life. There's both have to come into play. How is my life when I'm living, right?
It's also just how much work is it to do it? So for instance, if I told you to sit in an ice bath for an hour every day, like, oh, okay, I could do that if it's really going to have benefits. But if I said you're going to get 80% of those benefits by using liquid nitrogen for 3 minutes, you'd probably say, give me my hour back. And it's entirely possible to fill up your day with crap that makes you live a long time. And then where are you? You're actually running backwards. So you look at it from ROI and you also look at it from individual needs. Okay, where are you biologically? The low-hanging fruit are don't eat the bad oils, don't eat sugar, don't eat grains, don't eat stuff that makes you inflamed.
What's the bad oils? Give me the bad. What are the bad oils?
Corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil, any kind of seed oils. Those cause inflammation, and we had some very serious malfeasance from American industry influencing government policy. And when all the restaurants switched from the good oils, the saturated fats we've used for thousands of years, 50% of the fat in our brain is saturated for a reason, and they convinced us to eat all these so-called healthy oils, our obesity rate, our cancer rate, our diabetes rate skyrocketed. And until we stop doing it, it's going to stay.
What are the healthy oils?
Grass-fed butter, egg yolks, grass-fed animals, coconut oil, palm oil, beef tallow, pork fat, avocados. Olive oil.
Got it. Olive oil?
Yep.
Olive oil, good.
Yep. And
Okay.
there's things like there's some nuts and avocados and things like that. But what's happening here is we've switched ourselves, so we eat these weird oils that never existed in our body. And what we try to do is we try to build our cell membranes. We like to think of ourselves as kind of having like a membrane, but it's not. It's tiny droplets of fat. And you can change what type of fat's in there. And this is going to sound weird, but if you're making a battery and you change the type of metal or the type of liquid in the battery, it changes what the battery does. Absolutely. We're in a big experiment on that. And 48% of people under age 40 have early onset mitochondrial deficiency. And everyone over that age has it. They just call it aging. But if you have enough energy, well, okay, then you have willpower, then you have focus, then you have emotional regulation. You also have protein folding. And that's kind of important because your body will sacrifice protein folding. It won't make healthy proteins. You'll get more wrinkly. You'll age more quickly simply because you don't have enough energy to maintain the system. But if you have enough energy to do what's necessary right now, and you have the ability to maintain your tissues, your body will do it, but not if you're low on energy. And this is why it's so critical that you eat and you also spend time not eating. So the body realizes it can't get lazy. That's why my next book is on fasting.
So one of the things I read, it's a study I saw maybe in the last 10 years, but close to 7 to 10 versus less, that there was a study on longevity in mice, and they proved that by restricting caloric intake, it increased life expectancy. And I think that's considered to be by, let's say, in the mainstream scientific community, which anything mainstream I take very lightly these days, but the only proven way to increase life expectancy is through fasting. Well, caloric restriction. Is that true in your mind? Well, listen, is that true? And it's not the only, but is it true?
It's actually not true.
Okay.
And the reason it's not true is...
You heard that study, right? Though you heard that study, right?
There was a study, but the study didn't say it was the only way. It just said it was a way. And I have a few friends who have been, they look like they're vegans. They're scrawny and weak and cold and tired all the time. But I know I'm going to live a lot longer. It turns out you can get those same benefits by taking a drug or by intermittent fasting or just periodically fasting. So it turns out that this long-term caloric restriction where you just don't eat enough every day, it's kind of a living hell and you don't need to do it.
What's the drug?
The drug is metformin. It's a low-cost generic diabetes drug. It's not one that I'm recommending people take. I talk about that in Superhuman, where there's pros and cons to it. In fact, it's one I took when the research first came out in 2003. I took it for 3 or 4 years and decided the risk-reward wasn't there for it. But in the book, I just want people to see there's so much evidence that we can extend lifespan. And you see these people out there, oh, no study has ever shown you can do it. I'm like, well, here's 20. So you could just say, I don't like any of those.
There was a book I read back in college.
Sometime
1978 or 9 by Dirk Pearson.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Those guys are my heroes back then, right?
Yeah. And I read that book and I got really into the whole life extension thing. And I remember he had him and his wife and, she showed elasticity of her skin and how like she had more elasticity. And it was a lot of it was about, I remember free radicals. He was a big proponent of free radicals, of getting rid of free radicals. So is that some of the basis where your interest in this started from that whole movement back in the 70s?
I definitely looked at the research in the 70s. The problem I had, though, is I weighed 300 pounds by the time I was 23.
That's a big problem.
Yeah, it was a big problem. And I had the diseases of aging. I had arthritis in my knees since I was 14. I had high risk of stroke and heart attack at age 28. I made $6 million when I was 26, lost it when I was 28, and my health was just falling apart. And then I started getting cognitive dysfunction. I couldn't remember stuff. It's like you put your car keys in the fridge and what was I going to say? Why did I drive to the store? What was the word? I can't remember the word, all that kind of stuff. Well, I got desperate and I said, I'm going to have to hack this because I'm pretty much old now. I started hanging out with people 3 times my age who were reversing their age. My friend Mike, who was 88 and was actually in love with a 36-year-old and had the energy. I don't mean bedroom energy. I mean, he'd call me at midnight and say, Dave, I'm so excited about this new idea. Like, we got to talk about this. I mean, the guy was more energetic than I was, right? Because he was managing his biology. And I learned so much from my elders. And they were the people who hung out with Dirk and Sandy. And for me, I'm the only guy who's 30 hanging out with people who are 90. And I just realized it's possible. It's just unusual and it takes work. And you don't just say, oh, I'm going to get younger tomorrow. And there's some things you can do in a month. You can be radically different, but it takes about 7 years to replace half the collagen in your body. It takes 2 years to replace half the fat in your body. And so if you cut out toxins and you start doing this and you do it over time, you get this weird thing where I'm 48. I can put my ankle behind my head. And I used to not be able to touch my toes. I'm a 33-inch waist, and I was a 34-inch waist even when I was probably 14 or 15. It's ridiculous. And I feel good all the time, and I have more energy than I ever have. And I can start, actually have 5 companies right now, and I just sent in my manuscript for my fasting book. I didn't have that in my 20s. And that's why I got into this stuff, because I was desperate. I bought life insurance in my 20s, the disability insurance.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on here.
Interesting. So in terms of the interesting thing about that I have seen with other movements, not so much, maybe it's been a long time since I read Life Extension, but I remember a lot of that was more about vitamins and supplements. And then the next book that I read that really intrigued me, it was not a book on life extension, it was a book on performance, and it was called Eat to Win.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a book that looked at food as a drug. And that really resonated with me. It talked about the glucagon cycle, glucagon glucose, right? And that whole thing, and how food is an incredibly powerful drug. And then you hear all these things, and then I started, and I was also a biology major and a chemistry major in college. So I really, knew deeply what this was about. And intuitively, it really made sense to me that food is a really important way to either extend your life or contract it, right? And I think that what I didn't get with Dirk and Sandy, it seemed like it was like 1,000 vitamins a day. It was a lot of vitamins, and almost like I felt like I didn't feel good. I almost didn't feel good from taking all the vitamins. And then I tried many times throughout the years to take those, go to a doctor and get the vitamin packs. And I felt like, as you said, now it's really true. You said ROI. And I remember saying it's a pain in the ass to take all these packs. I don't particularly feel good after I take the packs. There was something about it that didn't resonate with me. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I do about 150 supplements a day.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not making you feel good, it's because they're the wrong supplements. You shouldn't feel bad after you take them. So you're probably getting the cheap B vitamins. And we used to believe in synthetic vitamin E, and we used to believe that you had to stop free radicals. And it turns out you want to teach your cells to be good at making their own antioxidants. So if you constantly suppress antioxidants, then your cells become weak. If you periodically basically kick your cell's ass for a minute and they go, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to deal with this, then they become stronger at a subcellular level and you get really powerful.
And that makes sense, by the way, in the same way that when you send astronauts into space, their body disintegrates with no force of gravity to work against. The same way if there's no force against your body, your muscles of your body, or metabolism, right? I guess your body gets sluggish and lazy because I guess we're always trying to get to homeostasis. So the body takes the path of least resistance in some level and gets weakened. And it's almost like a muscle not exercised. It could be your immune system, or that's why I'm a big believer of not living the cleanest life. Like, I'm not scared of germs or anything else. I believe my immune system needs to be stressed and not suppressed.
So, you ask about vitamins and antioxidants and how all that comes together. It comes together where we have affordable lab tests for aging. We have the ability to say this thing in rats adds 95% to the amount of time that they live. What? Such a compound exists? Yes. And the studies have been replicated. That one is liposomal. Not liposomal. It's buckyballs, basically. It's carbon nanospheres. And they dope the mitochondrial membrane. And carbon-60 is another name for it. And the first studies came out in the late 90s. And now they can formulate stuff where it actually works. So you give it to your dog. If you don't believe me, your dog gets healthier. Stuff works. So
do you take it yourself?
Yeah, I take it. There's a company called C360 Health who makes the stuff that I take. You have to watch out because the olive oil that it's packaged in is oftentimes terribly damaged. And I'll tell you, eating damaged, fried seed oils and things like that is really harmful for your brain and your longevity, even your mental performance the next day. So I'm pretty religious about being very careful on the kind of fat that I eat. To the point that I live on an organic farm and I raise my own animals, and most of the stuff that I eat comes from my farm or from reputable sources. And I've learned how to eat to not be 300 pounds, to never be hungry, and to feel good all the time. And I'm just not willing to sacrifice that, because to me, that's the most precious thing possible. I'm fine to skip my vitamins for a few days. It doesn't really matter short term, but long term, I am a smarter, faster, stronger, healthier, calmer, all of the things that I value in the way I show up in the world if I get the right nutrients. And a lot of people say, but I should get all of my nutrients from my food. That only makes sense if you get all of your toxins from Mother Nature. But we filled the world with all sorts of weird crap that didn't exist before. So of course you're going to need extra help processing that. We have changed the environment around us, and our bodies always listen to the environment. So now I'm going to take countermeasures, which are going to allow me to live longer than I'm supposed to. It's just not that hard to do. It used to be really hard to do, but we have the data now. You can get lab tests online. It was hard 20 years ago. It's easier now. It's just not cheap enough. And now it's about making this accessible for everyone instead of just for the people who are fortunate enough to be able to buy a bunch of vitamins.
How much time, if you want to really let's say I said to myself today, I'm glad I had this podcast with Dave, because I really believe in this stuff, and I should really now, because it's been on my mind. It really has been on my mind lately. As I'm in my 50s, and I'm enjoying. I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life, in terms of more content with the path of my career, and I love that. And I want more time. I'm not ready to say, hey, I only got 10 good years left or 15 good years left. I don't want to live that way. So what's the first step for someone like me?
Well, the first step for someone like you is to get a full workup. And if you hired a new CFO for your company, they're going to look at your numbers and they're going to say, how are you doing? And then they're going to look at them next quarter and they're going to say, are they going up and to the right, or are they going down, depending on what the number is? And you probably don't know really what your status is right now. So you want to team up with a good functional medicine or an anti-aging doctor. And there's a bunch of them at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine, or the institutions that provide functional medicine certifications. And when you find a doctor like that in your area, they're probably going to take about 20 vials of blood. They're going to get your hormones. They're going to get your thyroid levels. They're going to get your vitamin and mineral levels, and probably look at toxic metals and things like that. And based on an interview with you, they're going to see, oh, do you need food allergy panels or whatever else? And you're going to run those things and go, wow, I didn't know I was low or high in copper. If you're low in copper, you're going to hate your life. If you're high in copper, you're going to hate your life. Your zinc is probably low. And they're going to say, did you know your testosterone is not where you want it to be? What do you want to do about that? Do you want to try and change your diet and your sleep? Or do you want to take some testosterone shots? Most guys over age 40 age less and feel much better when they have adequate testosterone. Me?
I take testosterone.
You do? Mm-hmm. Good for you. I did too. In fact, when I was 26 and I got my first testosterone test, I had less testosterone than my mom, because I was obese and because my biology was pretty broken. So I started taking it back then, and I went off it for 3 years when I was developing the Bulletproof Diet, the book that I published by that name. People have lost 1 million pounds on that diet. And I went off it and I said, if I balance everything perfectly, I can keep my kind of okay, but why? So I've been on testosterone pretty much 22 years now.
I just switched to something called Xyloset. I was taking the intramuscular. Now I'm taking subcutaneous.
Yeah.
And testosterone cypionate. Because I find it doesn't bloat me as much. When I take propionate, I get a little bloated. So I found a really great balance with testosterone for many, many years now, and I feel so much better when I'm on it, and so much worse when I'm off it. It's like night and day. It's like not even close.
It's not about bedroom.
No, nothing. Forget the bedroom. Not even that. I just feel better. I just feel better, more energetic. I feel more balanced. It's also great for bone density, I know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons. So that makes perfect sense what you said. So first step, so I had a doctor here. His name is Dr. Chris Renner. He's a very well-respected doctor in LA for anti-aging and stuff like that. You know who he is?
I've heard the name. I haven't met with him.
Yeah. And I know he has a very popular clinic here. So that's the first step. That makes sense. Find out, essentially like anything else in the world, find out where you are. You need an accurate starting point before you start any journey. Like if a card, if you want to take a trip and you want to use GPS or your navigation, well, guess what? You need to have a current destination before you plug in where you want to go.
Yeah.
And then the idea is a book like yours would be the roadmap to get there, essentially, right? But you need to know where you want to go, where you start, and then a strategy to arrive at that point, right? So your book and your teachings are basically the strategy and what you've learned over the years, correct?
That's exactly right. And for food, I wrote the Bulletproof Diet. And for your brain, it's called Headstrong. And this is everything you can do to make your brain work better. So you have more electricity, more neurotransmitters, and everything works right. Because these are things I had to fix for myself. And then I wrote the most recent one, Superhumans, how to get more time. Now that my stuff works, I actually want more time. And one of the things that at this point is just provably worth it is a monitoring device. I was CTO of a company that made the first wrist-based heart monitor, like a Fitbit. We sold the company to Intel for $100 million years ago. So I went really deep on the space. I wear a ring today called Aura. And this ring tells me every morning, how stressed am I? Something called heart rate variability. This is a daily metric, like how you look at what's the balance on your trading account if you're doing day trading and all. Is it up or is it down? So yeah, it tells me how much REM sleep, how much deep sleep. But more importantly, it tells me how did I recover last night? And it's really interesting because I've gotten to the point where I get more deep sleep and more dreaming sleep in 4 or 5 hours than most people get in 8 hours. And those types of precious sleep, the restorative things, they go down as you age, but mine are better than most college students. So last night, I just woke up at 5 in the morning. I went to bed at 1. And I just didn't want to go back to sleep. I had too much good stuff going on. And I checked my numbers, and what do you know, an hour and a half of deep sleep and an hour and a half of REM, that's about what most people get in a really good night's sleep. And my heart rate variability was 50% higher than normal. Wait, my ROI on my sleep was through the roof. And I know why that is, because I was using a specific device that enhances sleep quality, and I took the supplements that I take before sleep. But what if what you looked at, Jordan, was the first thing is, how do I make my sleep have a higher ROI? Look, you were going to do it anyway.
I'm a terrible sleeper, Dave. Terrible.
Oh my God, let me hack you. This is
the worst in the world. The worst in the world.
I just did a big sleep challenge, just had 1,000 people at the same time, all the hacks for this. And this is probably going to go beyond the scope of this, but one of my companies makes glasses. We have sexier models than this. These are circadian biology glasses. The company's called TrueDark. Now, look like Cyclops now, right? These are only for jet lag. Like you'd wear these if you're going to fly to Europe and you want to wake up and feel like yourself the next morning. I don't experience jet lag anywhere in the world anymore if I control the color of my evening lighting.
Sure, of course. I went with the company Delos Living. You know Delos Living?
Yeah.
I was involved with that company. I was an early adopter of the shareholder and everything. And
good deal.
I was very much involved in that. Yeah.
With the bulb. So you understand the circadian biology angle.
Of course.
It turns out there's 4 colors of light.
Blue light in the morning, red light at night, right? And that's the whole thing that wakes you.
Yeah, it's basically that's it. But at night, most of the times people say, I'll just use blue blockers. Problem is that they don't work. So by looking for 14 years of monitoring my sleep, I dialed it in. So I now get twice as much deep sleep as I used to, actually way more than I really used to. And that's controlling the color of the light, but you have to block out colors beyond blue in order to make it work. That's why there's layers in the lenses. And morning, getting some sunlight and things like that. But the other things you can do, there's supplements before bed, there's room temperature, and then you can dial very carefully in on which supplements are going to make you sleep better. But Ambien isn't one of them.
Definitely not. I don't take anything for sleep.
Good.
I do not. It doesn't work because it's a vicious cycle. Once you get into them, they work for a couple of days and then just a rebound effect. They stop working. It's terrible. Awful.
It's really not good for you. And the other thing is, do you eat after the sun goes down?
Yes.
That's your problem. And it's really irritating, especially if you're in New York. You're always at dinner until 10 or something. I will tell you, the lighter you eat or the less you eat after it's dark, the better you will sleep that night. And if you drink before bed, even if it's wine older than you are, 1 glass of alcohol will ruin your sleep quality. But you're never going to see these things. I went to bed, I went to sleep, I had dinner, whatever, and I woke up in the morning and I went about my day. But if you're tracking the actual performance metrics of your sleep, very well every single time you do something, oh man, I just smacked myself in the head. So if you're running a business, and I say this, I've built a pretty sizable business here. If you're running a business and you believe something to be true and it's not true, and you keep doing it, you're likely going to go out of business, right? Because you're operating on false data. So I'll just have a nightcap because it makes me go to sleep. Except what it's doing is it's knocking you out, but your sleep is no good when you do that. So then you continue the practice and you start to decline. You don't want to do that. So now with a little bit of data, rings cost a few $100 and they're unobtrusive. You can wear it only when you sleep. You can wear it all day. It also tracks your exercise. But if you look at that and say, oh, that was worth it because now I have a daily metric. Was today an up day or a down day? And that alone, Jordan, will completely transform how you think about your behavior during the day, what it did to your sleep that night. And when you wake up in the morning and you look at your score and go, that's weird. I guess I really should have got curtains that blocked out the light the way Dave says. The reason is that the amount of street light that comes around curtains in the average room, even if they're blackout curtains that have light coming around the edges, increases depression by 69% in a study of 800 people. So you should sleep in a cave, a cool cave. And if you do that and it's dim, candle dim for an hour or 2 or 3 before bed, and you don't eat after dark and you don't drink alcohol, you'll be amazed. You'll sleep like a baby. And if you do that for a week, you'll just realize the ROI is very high on that. You only drink Friday nights or something, but you don't do it, a social drink. It's just not worth it.
Why is it eating only before dark? Why is that important?
Way back 2 billion years ago, we have this story that, there were these cells, they were us. We think they were parasites. We don't really know what kind of cell they were, but there were these other little red bacteria floating around. And then we say, we harnessed the bacteria and they became our mitochondria. And the bacteria like to float to the surface during the sunny time and they would feed. And then at night when it was cold, they would go down and they wouldn't feed, they'd be dormant. And there's a cycle that's tied to light and it's tied to food. Well, the real story is that 2 billion years ago, our cells are floating around. These little bastard bacteria moved in, took over, and to this day, they run us like little petri dishes because they call the shots. They get to say how much energy you have, how many hormones you have, and basically what your cells do, which controls what you do. So they're still listening to that ancient cycle of food and light, which are the 2 big signals for circadian timing. And unfortunately, if you tell them, it's dark now, but there's food, they just get confused. Light is the stronger signal, but food's important. So you can actually manipulate both of those. And what happens is people who are bad sleepers become really good sleepers.
Do you recommend putting circadian appropriate bulbs in your home so you can have the changing cycle? So they sell these bulbs, what Delos did is that these bulbs and they emit different ranges of light. They actually mirror the setting sun, and then at nighttime, even when your house is light, it's that yellowish amber light that doesn't cause you to create I think it's, what does it say, that you want to create melatonin at nighttime and then cortisol in the morning.
Those are the right hormones. In fact, my company TrueLight makes lights that do that specifically. The problem is that those amber lights at night, we thought those worked in the 90s, but then they discovered something in the eyes called melanopsin sensors. A guy from UC San Diego with a cool name, Sachin Panda, figured this out. But it turns out it's the color of the light, and amber is a color that affects melatonin, but it's the brightness, the color, and the angle of the light are the 3.
The lux is involved, right? And how many
lux is involved, and it turns out if the light's up here above your head versus down here, that also tells your brain what time of day it is. So it's very sensitive to light. In fact, I filed a patent for TrueLight on glasses that work based on all 3 of those things. And so what you'll find is that, yes, anything you do that lowers the intensity of the light or takes away blue helps. But blue blockers just don't do enough at night, and they do too much during the day. So it's actually more complex than I'd like it to be. But bottom line is, don't eat after it's dark, dim the lights as much as you can, and consider wearing some of the glasses or having red bulbs, not amber bulbs. And yeah, you look like you live in a submarine for an hour while you're reading before bed, but who cares? You slept twice as good.
Yeah, I wouldn't care at all, by the way. I mean, not even one bit. My sleep is such a awful affliction, insomnia, and the way it takes away from the quality of your life, that that to me would be the ultimate ROI, would be to harness the ability to go to sleep at night.
Do you want to hack it right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
What's your sleep problem?
I probably would have 3 less divorces if it wasn't for my sleep. My sleep problem is that I think, if I want to be dead honest with you, when I was very young, I had night terrors when I was in my 7, 8, 9, and 10 years old, right?
Yep.
And I began to, as a child, fear going to sleep at night and forcibly kept myself up because I was scared to go to sleep because I had bad dreams and even anxiety, almost panic attacks before bedtime. So I trained myself in my teens to fight sleep, and I think I got myself into a pattern of not relax. I essentially programmed myself to not sleep at night and rather fight it, and then until I'm so dead tired, I finally just pass out because I keep the TV on all night and try to avoid sleep. And that was at the beginning of it. And then I think I totally corrupted myself with drugs in my 20s. And a lot of that was about sleep too, because Quaaludes made me sleep at nighttime. Then I got sober. By the time it was too late. Then I already had gotten, the cycle was already sort of emotionally corrupted. And I think emotions tied directly to the chemicals you create in your brain. So, if I say I'm anxiety, well, there's biochemical things happening with neurotransmitters that are causing that and impacting that. And I think over time, as you said, like, any system, it gets set in a bad direction. I think that's kind of what happened.
Okay, I got it. You actually have something that I made up a name for my friend Jim Quick. Post-traumatic sleep disorder.
He's on my podcast, Jim Quick. I love Jim.
Oh, Jim's a dear friend. Okay. He's been public about having had some problems with sleeping lately. And you get this fear of not sleeping or fear of sleeping either way. Yeah. And a lot of people who are really tired, I'm so tired. And then they get afraid of being tired. So it just creates this cycle where going to sleep creates stress. Stress stops you from going to sleep, just like you described. So there's biochemical stuff that we can do, and just fixing your sleep environment the way I talked about, the way I write about in my books or on the Dave Asprey blog. I talk about sleep hacking, and there's a whole bunch of posts about sleep. So I'm going to assume that you got your sleep environment dialed in where it's dark and cool and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, it's cool. It's dark. I have good blackout shades. So
okay, you're doing it right. You don't have bright white lights in your bathroom when you wake up to pee or anything like that. All right,
no.
Good. So the way you're going to handle your fear of sleep this is advanced stuff that I don't usually have to tell people about, but it's so cool what's going on there. There's two paths to getting rid of the automated pattern matching in your body. I talked about those ancient bacteria, those mitochondria before. The way your body really looks at the world is that subcellular organelles, these tiny little parts of you, they're scanning the environment for threats constantly, right? And then if they see one, they activate the cell's threat response. And then it rolls up into the local system. And then it rolls up into the next one. And eventually it gets to your brain. But they've already triggered the alarms before you ever get a chance to pay attention. What they're doing is they're looking for a threat. And bedtime's a threat. They're going to trigger the alarm. You don't get to think about it. You don't get to decide. No one's ever seen, oh, look, there's a tiger. I think I'll decide to be afraid. Like you jump and then you notice, oh yeah, there was a tiger about to pounce on me. Well, that's the system we have to hack. So to do that, there's two technologies. One of them is called EMDR, eye movement dissociative response. You go to a therapist.
For PTSD, it's very powerful.
It's for PTSD, right? The other one is something that I do at my neuroscience company. It's called Neurofeedback. My neuroscience company is called 40 Years of Zen. We take executives 5 days, intensive training, hook their brains up to electrodes, and actually look at what's going on in there and then show you how to turn it down. So you probably have very high levels of beta around bedtime in certain parts of the brain at certain wavelengths. So we look at that and go, let's show you how to turn those down so you can actually relax those and how to turn up the other brain waves. And these are conscious skills you can learn. So the brain will self-regulate. It'll do it in a better way. So you might need to go that deep, but you might just with EMDR talk about what's the first time you ever had a night terror. Like you really go into it with a therapist doing this thing where they move your eyes back and forth with EMDR. And what's going to happen is you'll be able to go, yeah, I had these night terrors, but there's no emotion, there's no fear, there's no feeling left. You don't get any little tension in your gut.
Similar to almost like I know what it is. It's I guess you could say it would be the equivalent of a NLP timeline regression hack where I'm going back and trying to just double dissociate from my own experiences and go meta above and look down at myself with the resources of an adult and say I really wasn't scared, it was excitement or whatever it might have been, and then go back and create a safety sandwich on either side of that experience and then slowly roll up and let the memories rearrange themselves like that.
Very similar. There's a couple of nuances with EMDR that are different from that, but basically you get it. And so what you got to do is make it so, all right, you feel safe about going to bed. And then we want to address it biologically as well. And to turn on one more training thing, for about $100, you can get something called a heart rate variability trainer. And there's a few companies that make those now. This is a thing you put on your finger or you clip it on your ear. And when your body goes into sympathetic fight or flight response, you actually we'll see changes in your heartbeat. It doesn't get faster or slower, but the evenness of the beats increases. So a stressed animal has a perfectly even heartbeat. So still 60 beats a minute, but it's one beat every single second. And a calm animal ready for bed might have 2 beats in 1 second and 1 beat the next second. And so the variability of the spacing in that 1 minute is very varied. You won't know what that feels like unless you're an advanced meditator or yogi or something like that. But it's an app you run on your iPhone, breathe in, breathe out, make the light turn green and make a binging sound. And when you do it right, you realize there's this weird feeling in your chest. And all of a sudden you just turned off your sympathetic nervous system when that happens. And I remember I trained a hedge fund manager a while back at the beginning of Bulletproof. I used to do coaching. So this guy, very accomplished trader. And I said, you need to get one of these things. He got it and he never used it. And he said, I got bored on an airplane. So I tried it. And you know what? I kind of like this. So it took me 6 weeks to learn how to turn off my fight or flight response. But I got to where I could put the machine and I could get it in the green zone and I'm in charge of myself. So I decided just one day I was going to sit down at my desk and I was going to get myself in the zone. And then the market bell rang to open the market. He said, it turned red. He said, I spent the entire day in fight or flight mode. And I've been trading for 20 years in fight or flight mode. And it took me another 6 weeks to train myself to be calm when the market was open and my trades improved. And I went home at the end of the day and I was full of energy and I felt really good. What you're going to do though, is you're going to do this before you go to bed. You're going to spend 20 minutes. It'll only take you a month to master this. So 20 minutes before bed doing this thing, but you're going to have glasses on or dim the lights on your phone a lot if you're going to do that on your phone. And you're just going to learn how to control the nervous system. And when you do this, your heart rate variability goes down. You feel like you're just in a state of bliss and you go to sleep. And that combination of either EMDR or doing 40 years of Zen, which is a bigger investment, but has bigger amounts of things it does for you, combined with not eating before dark, combined with wearing the glasses before bed to block out all the bad light. If you don't go to sleep on that regimen, you're probably not actually human. Now, do you have a hard time with waking up in the middle of the night?
Yes.
Okay, when?
Every hour, every 2 hours. Terrible
Wow.
sleeper, Dave. Terrible my whole life. I never sleep more than 3 hours straight.
You got to get a ring, an Oura ring. So
I'm going to. I'm going to. Where do I get all this stuff? So how do I get it?
Oura. If you go to, I don't have a single sleep thing. Tell you what, daveasprey.com/sleep challenge. Sign up for that. I'll reopen it.
I will. Yeah, no, I definitely want to do this.
It has all the resources right there and all the discount codes. Not that you really need the discount codes, but they're just all listed for you right there.
Yeah.
I'll get you into the program.
I also want to. One thing I really want to talk to you about is brain function.
Well, sleep is your number one smart drug. Number two is going to be Bulletproof Coffee.
Now let's talk about Bulletproof Coffee. So the first time I heard about Bulletproof Coffee, I laughed out loud because it was in Australia. And it was a friend of mine who owned a solar company called Biosolar, right? Mm-hmm. And not very nice. His name was Lee Storr. I don't know if you know Lee Storr. He was an early adopter of Bulletproof Coffee. And I used to do this stuff. And he had this coffee thing. And he's putting all the stuff in. And like, what is that? He goes, oh, it's called Bulletproof Coffee. It was 2016. Yeah. 2015. It wasn't really as popular back then, right? When did it really start getting traction? Maybe I'm just slow on. Maybe it was, and I'm embarrassed. I'm slow on the deal team. When did it really get traction?
2013 and 2014. I came out with it in 2011, and it took a little while to get popular. And it's been a big deal since then.
No, I know it's a really big deal. By the way, it's a really big deal. And I guess when I first heard it, is like, now. Obviously, as a scientific-minded person, it made sense to me. It wasn't like I thought it was stupid. Not that the idea was stupid. Of course, I said, yes, obviously, I read books like Eat to Win. I know about biology. I know about, so it's not like I'm just like, but it just was an interesting take. What made you think of that? Like, where did you call it? I know you said you met someone like a Sherpa or someone that actually you saw them doing grass-fed butter in tea or something. How did it start?
The way it started was I've tried every diet out there. I was a raw vegan. I'd done everything I could. I'd been in Atkins, early keto, and all these things. And I got to the point where I'd lost enough weight that I could go to Tibet, and I wanted to learn meditation from the masters because, in addition to being fat and having a brain that didn't work, I was also kind of an asshole. So I wanted to understand, why did I make bad decisions and in relationships and jobs, and why do you do the things you're ashamed of? So I'm in the middle of nowhere. It's called Mount Kailash, 18,000 feet, 10 degrees below zero, feeling like garbage because there's no air to make energy, hypoxia and all that. And this little Tibetan woman gave me a bowl of yak butter tea. And I drank it because there was nothing else to drink. And within a couple minutes, I felt amazing, like better than I'd felt in a year. And it made no sense to me. I took a little note in my travel journal, like, this is impossible. And I drank as much of that as I could find. And I came back to Silicon Valley after the trip and I said, I want that high again. So I bought some tea and I bought some butter and I blended it up and it tasted like crap and it didn't work. And I thought, oh man, it's the tea. So I spent $1,000 on high-end, Chinese tea in Mountain View, California. And what I ended up with was a lot of wasted tea because it still tasted like crap and it didn't work. So then I tried 25 different butters and the 2 that were made out of grass worked. And with coffee, I said, well, coffee works better than tea, but a lot of coffee, I quit coffee for 5 years because it would make me cranky and jittery and angry. And that has to do with agriculture, the way we grow coffee, and the fact the U.S. has no protections on the amount of mold toxins in coffee. So when coffee gets rejected from China and Japan and Europe, they send it to the U.S. where we happily drink it, and then we get tired and cranky an hour or 2 later. And no, I'm not making any of that up. That's all government stuff. But I said, well, I can hack coffee. And that was the first product at Bulletproof was, all right, I'm going to make some coffee that's free of these toxins. It said coffee for mission critical performance because I don't want to drink coffee and crash. I just got tired of that. Market size was 0 for clean coffee. Now it's a big industry category. And what I found there was butter works, and I couldn't tell you why. You had this oil called brain octane oil. That's from the anti-aging world. And I knew about that because the first studies ever about coconut oil said that it helped with Alzheimer's disease, and they hypothesized it was the MCTs. So you take this MCT oil, you take grass-fed butter, and you take coffee without mold. You brew the coffee, you blend it all up, tastes like a latte. It took me about 1,000 different combinations to figure out what worked reliably, what everyone liked, what tasted good. But for me, it was like turning the light switch on for me every single morning. It did so much good for my brain, for my biology, that I just felt like sharing it. That was my first blog post ever on my blog. It used to be called the Bulletproof Executive because no one ever writes for Wall Street execs. No one ever writes for Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. We're different people. There's weekend warriors, there's pro athletes, there's celebrities and all that kind of stuff. But at the time, we were some of the hardest working people I'd ever known. I built my career in Silicon Valley and no one ever talked to me about the stuff I cared about. Right. And I thought, I'm just going to write this blog for people who actually want their brain to work all the time. And it's not about being smarter than someone else. It's just about being smart enough to do your craft, to be able to stay up as late as you wanted, to be able to focus as hard as you wanted, to be able to pull that final idea out. To me, that's what mattered most. And that's from Bulletproof Coffee. That's what it's for. And it turns out the Tibetan monks were right. I funded research at University of Washington about what it does to water structure. We understand what it does to neurons and why they like it.
How does it work? What's the basis of it? So how does it work?
Well, when you put fat molecules from butterfat in water and you shake it up, blend it around the way the Tibetans would do it was with a butter churn, it changes the structure of water. In order for your cells to fold proteins or to make ATP, they have to take the water you drink and they heat it up at 1200 nanometer light, basically heat. And they do that, which creates something called exclusion zone water. This is based on Gerald Pollack's work at the University of Washington. And I wrote a $50,000 check to his lab and said, help me figure this out. And it was just an open check just to do what he wanted. But what he does, he tested butterfat and water and found that it makes a giant exclusion zone. So what the Tibetans figured out without any of this kind of crazy science was if you have tiny droplets of butter in tea, that they were charging the water. So when they drank it in an environment that has very little food and very little air, they were taking a step that your cells have to do and they were moving it outside the body. So when they drank the water, they could use it right away to make energy. And that's why these little Tibetan guys who are half my size could carry 4 times what I could carry. And they could wear a thin cotton t-shirt when I'm wearing a parka and they could fall in a river and get out and laugh about it. These guys are tough. It's because of the way they live. There's some genetics in there, but it's because they understood every little trick there was to survive in a harsh environment, including yak butter tea.
So the Bulletproof coffee that I could buy, where it's like iced coffee, where you shake it up, is that every bit as good as the best? Is there better than that? Is there levels of Bulletproof coffee? Is the stuff that we buy in the store the best out there, or is that better and more effective?
The Bulletproof coffee that you buy at the store is the very best you can get. We lab test the beans to be clean. We've put in different coffee processing infrastructure in Central and South America to make those beans that way, and we lab test the beans. We use grass-fed butter, and there's actually 4 kinds of MCT oil. We use the one that's clinically validated to be the most potent. And whether it's the cold brew that's ready to go or you want to brew it yourself at home and blend it yourself, they both work equally well. And the difference is it's so profound when you have that. In fact, I gave some recently to a Qigong master, a world-renowned one, for the first time, and he drank it. And 10 minutes later, he just looked at me and goes, it works. So there's internal shifts that happen.
So how do you recommend? So you wake up in the morning. How long after you wake up should you have your first bulletproof coffee?
There's two answers to this. If you wake up at 5 or 6 a.m., bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and you're one of those people that everyone wants to punch because you're a morning person.
Not me.
Yeah, not me either. Well, if you're one of those people, you should wait a couple hours to have your coffee because you already got your circadian cortisol and acid spike early. And the way coffee metabolizes is it starts out acidic and then it tapers to become alkaline. That's why when people say coffee is acidic, those people are bad at biological chemistry. So what you end up wanting to do is if you wake up feeling like garbage, drink your coffee as soon as you can. And that's going to raise your cortisol when you need it raised, which is good. And it's going to raise your acid levels temporarily, which is good. That's what actually gives you energy in the morning. And then as you metabolize it, it'll turn into alkaline, which gives you endurance. So it's either first thing or as soon as you can after you wake up, or it's an hour or two after you wake up, depending on whether you wake up full of energy or you wake up full of basically hate.
And how does that interact with you drinking on an empty stomach to get the maximum effect, or with food?
If you're doing bulletproof intermittent fasting, which is something that helped intermittent fasting become popular, you can do it on an empty stomach and then you get the benefits of fasting, but you don't have the pain and the hunger. So where people are just starting to fast, you do it on an empty stomach. You're like, I didn't need breakfast. So most people just say, I'm going to replace breakfast. But you say, oh, I want some protein, have a couple eggs and drink a bulletproof coffee. That's fine. But don't have a bunch of bread and stuff like that, and a bunch of sugary stuff, because that's not a good breakfast anyway. But whatever you do, if you drink bulletproof coffee, it will make you full in a way that's unbelievable because it's manipulating ketone levels in the body, and the ketone levels control these hunger hormones called ghrelin and leptin and CCK.
Sure.
So it's very interesting. We didn't know any of this when bulletproof coffee came out. You could just feel it was a very profound combination. And since then, all these studies keep coming out. But the amount of MCT oil that's in there, it turns off a hunger hormone and it turns on a satiety hormone. So people are saying, I would die if I didn't have my bagel at 10 a.m. or someone puts a donut in front of you and you're just like laser focused on it. It goes away. You drink your bulletproof coffee, nothing else, and you just don't care about the bagel. And it's that freedom that makes keeping your weight off very easy to do. And it's because the MCT oil in there manipulates those things. It's also because the amount of caffeine in a normal 2 small cups of coffee doubles the amount of ketones your body makes. You don't have to be like a keto nerd saying, I will never eat a carb again, and I'm only going to eat bacon for the rest of my life. And there are people like that. But what I'm talking about here is a small bump in them that comes from the things you put in your coffee. Just like you were saying before, food's like a drug. Well, you're putting specific oils in the coffee that change the chemistry of the water and change the amount of energy available for your brain and change the amount of ketones, which changes the amount of hunger signaling. And you stop giving a crap about eating. And lunchtime comes around, and instead of thinking about it, studies show about 1/3 of the thoughts you have every day about what's for lunch or what's for dinner. That voice shuts up and the energy goes back into doing something. It is so liberating. As a former 300-pound fat guy, I cannot tell you, like I killed that voice in my head and it's so good.
And in terms of dieting, do you subscribe to like the keto type of diet, high protein, high fat, low carb diet?
I've talked about this term called dirty keto, and the bulletproof diet, 1 million pounds people have lost, and it's got a roadmap, and it says here's some foods that don't cause inflammation. And generally, some of the time you're in ketosis on it, some of the time you're not. People who go into ketosis and stay in ketosis, universally, 99% of the time, they get sick. Women get sick before men do. But I see these guys, they'll come to me and, Dave, I need help. I've been in ketosis for 2 years and it works so well at first and my sleep is gone. It's no good. And my testosterone levels are dropping. I'm starting to lose my hair. Like, it's because you need some carbs already. So you don't have to be in ketosis all the time. You want to drop 25 pounds, go in ketosis. You can do what I talk about in the Bulletproof Diet. You can go in, go out, go in, go out, or just intermittent fast. The way I talk about, skip breakfast, have your bulletproof coffee. It's enough ketones. You'll be fine. Don't eat a crappy dinner. And that's enough. So you can do ketosis, but don't do it for more than a couple of weeks. Then have some rice already and then go back in. And if you do that, you can lose as much weight as you want, but you don't need to do it all the time. It's probably not even good for you.
What do you think about drugs like modafinil and Adderall in terms of waking up in the morning?
The reason modafinil is part of popular culture is because in about 2010, I went on Nightline and they did a special on it. I was the only guy who would go on without a bag on my head. So I said, look, I got through Wharton. I got my Ivy League MBA on modafinil. It changed my career in Silicon Valley. It changed my meditation. It changed my relationships, and it made me a better person. And it's the limitless pill.
I love modafinil. I was one of the first people on it.
Nice.
I've been taking it forever. I haven't missed a morning of modafinil in 10 years.
I took it for 8 years. And once I got Bulletproof Coffee dialed in, once I did my neurofeedback and all, I tested my brain speed on and off of it. You can't tell a difference. So I like using modafinil when necessary. And now, I mean, I haven't really relied on...
Maybe a better human being, modafinil. It was the only drug I can ever say was literally without any negative side effect, without any addiction, without any artificial mood alteration, without anything. It just made me a better human being.
I love it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, there's just zero downside, massive upside, and nothing in between.
The people who say it's cheating.
It's absolutely not cheating. It doesn't wake you up. It just makes you not sleepy. It's a very big difference.
There is a big difference. Then again, the reason it made such a big difference for you is you're almost a narcolept. That's what they're for narcolepsy. And you're almost that because your sleep is so crappy. So you got bigger benefits. And about 20% of people don't feel anything from it but a headache.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? There was another drug that came out that I thought would be a breakthrough for sleeping. That was the agonist the antagonist to modafinil, which was a drug that did not perform well in phase 3 trials. It was Valericetis? What was it again? It was supposed to be it was supposed to attack. It was supposed to attack, not Aricept. That's for Alzheimer's. This was for supposed to hold on a second. Any more Bulletproof Coffee that I would have remembered. It was attacking the similar pathway as modafinil. It's an alternative pathway. Exactly, the orexin pathway, and it was an orexin agonist called something with an S. And it blew out in phase 3 trials. It was very close. And then they were saying that it was causing somnolence during the day and sleepwalking, and that it was no better than Ambien, which I think anything can be better than Ambien because it's just so terrible and awful and toxic. And I've seen more people do stupid shit on Ambien, and it's just ridiculous. It's the biggest scam ever that this is being forced on people. All of these. It's called what's it called again? I forgot it.
It wasn't still.
Oh, it's the orexin pathway. Guys, Google it while I'm talking. The orexin drug, sleeping pill for the orexin pathway, OREXIN. And it was supposed to be this big breakthrough, and it came out. There was there was a couple of sleep drugs in the pipe. Obviously I have research because I have such terrible insomnia. I was always up on this stuff. There was another drug called that was terrible. I mean, they were all. There's nothing.
I've got a good one for you.
What?
How about some G?
G? I've done G. I've done enough G to choke a horse.
Exactly. Now,
what about G for sleep?
Well, the reason G got outlawed, it was the only drug ever to be outlawed by press release. They literally said, "Oh, this is a date rape drug," in a press release, and suddenly it was Schedule 3. They're not allowed to do that. GHB is present in your body. It's present in fruit. It's a natural compound covered under the 1994 DSHEA.
Gamma hydroxybutyric acid, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. Right. And butyric acid also can improve sleep, which is funny. That's what's in grass-fed butter. That's what happens when your gut works very well is butyrate or butyric acid. So this is basically a modified form of that. And you can get it, GHB, as a prescription drug now. It's called Xyrem, and it's pretty expensive. And for hard sleepers like you can get it. And you take it before bed. And
Suvorexin. That's it. Suvorexin. I knew it was an S. Suvorexin. Yep.
Mm-hmm. It would have been interesting if that stuff worked.
It would have been real. I was really looking forward to it. I said, wow, because I was getting such good results with modafinil. I was like, oh my God. It was like this. I thought it was me. Boom, boom. And
you could just have an up and a down. I think you might want to try a little bit of that G before bed, but get not the street stuff, but get the prescription stuff.
I'll get it from the doctor. No, because I have a doctor.
It's called Xyrem.
Xyrem.
Yeah. And if you just Google prescription GHB, you'll find it. But what that'll do is that'll radically improve the growth hormone release. And what I found is that modafinil lost its effectiveness when I learned how to sleep like a rock star. Well, maybe not like a rock star, sleep like a great golden god. So I really don't feel much of a difference. My neurological response time, it drops as you...
Almost famous quote. There was an almost famous reference in there.
It was indeed. Man, you nailed that. All right. I love that movie.
Great movie, right?
Yep.
Russell from Russell on the Roof. I am a golden god.
Yes. I was like, what do I go from rock star to what's next? And it was that's what came into my mind. Man, you're good.
I'm a master of pop reference. I am. That's one of my strong suits, you know. And I have a really good, very strong memory. I really do. But I want to make it better because I don't want to lose that. I think, you know, I look at Joe Biden, I get nervous, you know. No, seriously, it's like, you know, he was never a rocket scientist, the guy, because I remember, I think you and I are close to the same age. I remember when he got in trouble for plagiarizing his speech when I was in high school or something, or freshman in college, and I never looked at him as being the intellectual pillar, but, you know, something has happened to the guy, I mean, in the last, 10, 20 years, obviously.
There's that whole aging thing. I'm going to see if my camera is going to pick this up for you. Let's see if this actually works. I never tried doing it. Come on, camera. You going to do this? All right. You see that? Nah, it's not going to work.
What?
I'm going to mess around.
It's just yellow. It's yellow.
Yeah. Come on. Show up. Autofocus. You can do it.
Okay. I see it. Yeah.
This is how your brain gets slower over time. See how that line goes up? That black dot is me. My response time in my brain is the same as a 20-year-old. And I'm in my late 40s. So it's hackable, right? You know, you have better memory than normal, but I didn't used to have that response time. I have a good response time now. And my memory is better than it ever has been. But it comes from over time, taking care of your mitochondria, taking care of your membranes, right? And for you, we got to get you sleeping. So I think that Xyrem before bed is going to rock.
I'm going to try it tonight. What do
the
you
other
think
thing for you, the modafinil probably isn't helping your sleep. How much do you take?
I take 200 milligrams when I wake up.
Okay, cool. That's not too bad of a dose. What's your body weight?
153.
Okay. So, I mean, you might try and back off a little bit if your doctor likes that idea. If 100 does it, I went anywhere from 100 up to 400 a day.
Yeah, I've done 4 on occasion. I stopped. I noticed the diminishing returns at 400.
Yeah, me too.
I think 200 is pretty much the dosage that works for me. I could take modafinil and go to sleep. I can take modafinil and go right to sleep. That's why I know it's not that's how good of the drug I believe it is. If I took it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I could be asleep at 6:30 at night if I want to be. It does not make me jittery. What about Adderall?
Adderall is just a terrible drug. I mean, it'll keep you awake, but it comes at a cost, and it makes you want to punch people for one thing. So I would just say, look, you're better off to rely on caffeine and sugar and nicotine before you go to Adderall.
Really?
Nicotine is actually an anti-aging drug anyway. Low dose nicotine is another way to make your brain work if you're really tired. So in my anti-aging book, I talked about research that's been around since 1988 and been continuing for 30 years at Vanderbilt, showing that oral nicotine, but not smoking, not vaping, and not tobacco, but isolated pharmaceutical nicotine reverses Alzheimer's disease.
Nicotine and it is definitely a precursor to a lot of things, and the renin-angiotensin pathway. There's a lot of things it's involved in, and it regulates. So I would think that there's certainly there's a lot of a molecule like that has got so much bioactivity. Who knows what it does, right? I think people don't forget how complex the body really is. I mean, like, one thing affects so many different systems. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cascading effects. You brought up a point where I wanted to say something when you brought up this really interesting thing about, like, that we always think of fight or flight in a macro sense, like we're in a fight or flight mode, yet you said it actually starts on the level, almost a subcellular level, organelle-wise. So inside your cells, those little things like mitochondria and lysosomes, all those little organelles inside they actually originate the flight or fight response, although it's sub-perception. You can't perceive it yet, and then you only perceive it when it cascades up 3 levels up when you actually experience fight or flight.
That is something that is in the process of being proved. And the reason I understand that is my undergraduate degree has a concentration in artificial intelligence, and I used to work on how to build the modern internet. I taught classes at University of California, and I was a co-founder of the company that held Google's first servers. So I got real deep on this stuff. There's an algorithm for life, and it's real straightforward. It works for bacteria, and it works for cactus and zebras and humans. Run away from, kill, or hide from scary things. And you got to do that first and with all of your effort. So there's a 10x weighting on that variable.
Sure.
Then eat everything, because, well, famines kill most species over time. So if there's food, you take it, right? And after you've not been killed and you've eaten everything, you have sex with everything else. Because if you don't reproduce the species, it's the end of the world. Now, Jordan, is there anything you've ever done you're ashamed of that didn't come from one of those 3 things?
Probably not.
That's why I call mitochondria little bastards. Okay. So it originates as a network effect. It's an emergent behavior. In fact, a lot of our ego behaviors are emergent phenomena from something done trillions and trillions of times a second in tiny little decisions that are way below our consciousness.
And you know what's incredible is that I teach sales, you know that, right? And one of the foundational aspects I say is that, human beings are fear-based creatures. It's wired into our reptilian brain. Before someone decides whether or not there's a benefit, the first thing they always say is, what's the downside risk? So whenever I'm selling someone and closing, I'm always aware that it's not just enough that, okay, what's the upside? No, but what's the worst that can possibly happen? It's the same exact thing, because before you decide to stick about, and the way I explain it in sales, that, before we ever decide whether it made sense to stick around for a potential benefit, we're going to say, is it safe? Is it safe? Should I run and hide? That's like the basis of how I sell, is before I can even go to the upside, I got to address the downside as well, the risk.
It's because you're highly intuitive and you're sensing that and you're seeing it in people. And if that thing has 10 times more focus than a benefit, you better address that big concern. And one of the things people are afraid of is, what if I lose money? And
right.
I don't want to be taken advantage of. And so you got to get around those things so that then they can go into the next thing. Oh, wow, now I'm excited. But you won't be excited. You're not going to get to the food or the sex part.
It's incredible. It's so in line with just how persuasion works. Like I could quote a line from my book. It's like there's like literally like a 3-paragraph chunk when I say, human beings are fear-based creatures.
Yeah.
And I go through this whole thing about how we had the first is exactly what you said, but it comes to biohacking and really living, a life that's longer and more fulfilling and more energetic. And I guess it all comes down in the end to energy. If you don't have the energy to do things, then you really can't accomplish anything at all, right?
Well, think about it like this, Jordan. All right. We do the neurofeedback or the EMDR or the heart rate variability. We're going to turn down that first F word, fear.
Right.
You're going to do Bulletproof Coffee. You're going to turn down the second F word, food. Okay. You're going to have to deal with that third F word, fertility, yourself. And
thank God at this point in my life, it's not nearly as critical now as it was in my 20s.
Exactly.
But I still think about it every second, because I'm human, but
still, it was recreational, but not life.
Recreational, exactly.
And then the thing that for me is a saving grace. By the way, that algorithm is the only thing that explains all behaviors of all animals anywhere. And that's original thinking after I spent 2 years writing my book on mitochondria in the brain. I'm like, I get it now. I finally grokked that. And there is a fourth F word that gives me hope for humanity, and it's friend, right? And it's that after you get the garbage out of the way, what's left is what all species do. If you're these ancient bacteria, you form a biofilm. You make kombucha, you make yogurt. If you're a zebra, you get in a herd. If you're a tree, you become part of a forest, and you actually support the people around you. So it's not all darkness and hate and bad stuff. It's just you're going to overweight the bad stuff. You got to turn that down, and it's your job as a human being.
Before you can even get to number 4, though, you have to first resolve number 3.
Yeah, how are you going to serve your fellow humans if you're too busy worrying about being killed before you can choose to worry? And for me, I had huge amounts of anxiety. I slept like crap. I was fat. My brain wasn't working. My body hurt all the time. I was hungry all the time. And no wonder I was such a jerk. And I just went through and programmatically said, all right, how do I stop these invisible behaviors, these like puppet masters that are making me do this? And that was why I created this field of biohacking. And the definition was the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside of you so that you have full control of your own biology. I just want my body to shut up and not be hungry and to not make me think about things I don't want to think about and to just let me do what I'm here to do. And it just took a little bit more manipulating than I thought it would, but it's been worth it.
Let's talk about, in terms of the brain. So one thing you said that, so far I agree with everything you said, to increase cognitive function, maximize your ability to process, remember. So obviously things like Bulletproof Coffee, the right type of fast, the right type of energy, that makes huge difference right away. What do you think about things like NAD, like infusions? I've been getting NAD infusions lately. So do you believe in those, or you think that they're a waste?
In fact, one of my companies is called Upgrade Labs. It used to be called Bulletproof Labs. And we're at the Beverly Hilton in LA and in Santa Monica. And we do NAD infusions there. And I've been doing NAD.
I've been there. I think I've been there, by the way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah.
So we do NAD there. And we do NAD nasal spray. You can do NAD topical patches. You can do NAD sub-Q. And it was part of my last big book on anti-aging. I talk about NAD. It's a really powerful way to make your body move energy around, move electrons around inside better than it did before. I've done about 25 of the big intravenous infusions and countless little small injections of it. And I plan to do at least one infusion every quarter for the rest of my life because the evidence is that strong as an anti-aging substance.
But not more?
I probably will do more. Right now, I'm building a clinic out underneath my new offices up here in Victoria, British Columbia. So when that's there, I'll probably do it once a week just because.
I did one a month ago, and I was thinking about doing one tonight after this podcast. I was actually going to call. Can you tell tell my assistant, I'm going to commit to this on the podcast right now because Dave's inspired me so much. Tell my assistant right now to go to the store and buy Bulletproof. I want to buy Bulletproof iced coffee. I want to buy the Bulletproof packets, and I wanted to schedule an NAD infusion for me tonight. All right?
Nice. Get the mocha. That one's mocha. So good.
Well, I got the expert here, the mocha especially. It's interesting because it's funny, timely podcast because I've been really thinking about this a lot lately because I think there was times in my life when I wasn't as happy as I am now, and I didn't really care about living longer. Not that I wanted to. Not that I was not I want to die, but now I'm really I really feel like I'm giving back a lot. I really feel like I'm really hitting stride in my life, and I want to have another 30, 40 years of this. I don't want to have 10 more years of 20. I want 50 more years of it. I think, and I look, and I know I happen to, for some odd reason, physically look very young. I just do. I mean, I'm not aging at the rate. Believe it or not, I'm almost 60.
Wow.
So, I'm 58. All right. And I know I don't look even close to 58, which is a miracle. I always say I must have somehow petrified my innards with all the drugs I consumed in my 30s.
It depends on what you were taking.
No alcohol is the key, I think, is that's why I didn't age terribly. I was not drinking alcohol much.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about on air, but you're pretty open about that stuff.
Of course.
There's
nothing I won't talk about on air.
There's a section in Superhuman that was a little bit controversial because I said, heroin is an anti-aging drug. And it turns out heroin isn't really good for you, but low doses of pharmaceutical grade heroin actually do preserve the tissues like no one's business. And the reason heroin is such, people who are heroin addicts look so unhealthy is because they're getting crappy stuff, they're taking too much, and they don't have enough money for food. So there's something called Naltrexone, which is what they give to heroin addicts to get them off of heroin that you can take that turns off inflammation. So low dose Naltrexone is an anti-aging drug.
I take it.
A group of people, I think.
I take it.
Do I take heroin? I don't take heroin, but
No, I take Naltrexone. I take it.
Oh, you do? There you go. So then maybe that's why. That's a pretty potent anti-aging drug. That plus you're on testosterone. Those two things alone are going to make you just look younger than everyone else.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The thing that's annoying is that there's so many things.
There's so much out there, right? And I'm a well-read guy. I don't even know this stuff. It's
and how do you do all of it? Right. I put as much as I could into Superhuman. And at the beginning, I'm like, look, you're not going to do everything in this book. Don't even try it. I'll just get stressed out about it. Just pick out the ones that jump out at you and do those.
What's the big, as you say, you bring up a really good point, though, which I love, is this ROI. What's the big, there's some big obvious ones. For me, obviously, sleep, right? So you have to look at, you look at your own life. So I think for me, and I think everyone should look at this. It's not me. It's all about me. I'm like, no, because you say really, you're hitting a lot of my pain points. You really are, right? And that's a good thing. But I think I'm like most people. I think most people would say they could sleep better. I think most people would say that they're not feeling as much energy as they would like to feel. And I think all of us, when we get into our 40s and 50s, we start to look at our own mortality. I think it's a pretty common thing. But so just for everybody, I think the advice you're giving to me is almost advice you give to anybody. Step one, where are you right now? You first need to do an inventory. Where is your body? What things are naturally, I guess we all have our natural strengths and weaknesses. Like there's certain genetic predispositions that allow me, despite the insults that I have, put on my body, I'm still doing okay in certain departments. And yet you find others where naturally I'm just not. And we need to identify those very quickly and start the ones that probably somewhat easily shored up with very simple, interventions. That's step one, right? Go see someone, find out where you are, right?
Get the data, right?
And for someone without a lot of money, how do you do that?
If you don't have a lot of money, your best bet on data is actually going to be looking at something like the Oura Ring that looks at your heart rate variability, because you're not going to know why something's off. But if your numbers are low, something's wrong. And if your numbers are high, you did something right. So at least gives you a compass that tells you, up or down, north or south. And that's still a few $100. And if you don't have that, you know what to do? Just wake up in the morning and say, How do I feel? Scale of 1 to 10, just pick a number and write it down, right? And look at that over time. And if you wake up tomorrow morning and you feel like you get hit by a truck and you didn't get hit by a truck, you did something wrong, and you start course correcting. And there's an order of thinking about this. You can think about, okay, number one, get as much data as you can, right? But you can also get like a Fitbit tracker and things like that, slightly less than the Ring, not as good of data, but something like that is very helpful. But if you don't do that, that's fine. So you focus on your sleep because the ROI on sleep is very high. You were going to do it anyway. You might as well feel better. So it takes no more time to sleep well, and it probably takes less time. I find most people when they go bulletproof, they go on the bulletproof diet, they need an hour less sleep and they feel better, which is great. You get an hour of your day back. But at a minimum, you're already making the investment. You're just getting poor returns. So fix that first because the ROI is so high in energy and the investment is very low. The next thing you fix is fix your food. And the thing there is stop eating the stuff that makes you weak. Right? Like you don't have to eat some stupid kale superfood. By the way, kale is not good for you and it tastes bad. After that, you get breathing. And a lot of people say, what? It turns out breathing doesn't cost you anything and you do it every day. So if you can change how you breathe, you will live longer. And there's great science on this. I talk about some of the different breathing things in my books, but there's a new book by James Nestor called Breathe, which is worth reading. But one of the things you can do, I've interviewed the guys from this clinic on my podcast. It's called Buteyko breathing. And before I go to bed at night, this is how crazy I am. I actually take a piece of like very light adhesive medical tape and I put it across my lips. I sleep with my mouth taped shut. And you could say, Dave, that's the stupidest thing ever, except I'll say it's good for my marriage. Okay, that's not why I do it. I do it because when you do that, you don't snore. And because it raises oxygen in the brain very meaningfully, it makes you breathe through your nose instead of through your mouth. And the change in my sleep score and how I feel, and even in congestion, you're not congested at all when you do that. It is dramatic what that does over the course of 20 years when it improves your sleep doing that. I also every morning do just a few breathing exercises to make sure my lungs are fully empty and that I have lung volume, because lung volume is one of the things that makes you live a very long time. So I'm going to put breathing ahead of exercise. So it goes, get your data, sleep, look at food, look at breathing, then look at meditation, which is basically managing your stress, and then look at exercise. And when people tell you, oh, you feel like crap, just go for a run. It's like you forgot your sleep, you forgot your food, you forgot your breathing, you forgot your meditating, and then go for a run. That's how important it is. Exercise, it's important. You got to move for 20 minutes a day. But you don't have to go beat yourself up if you're already beat up at the beginning of the day. It's not a win.
Interesting. What about ice baths? Do you believe in the ice baths and like that whole thing?
In fact, I'd say the reason that they're a part of the biohacking universe is I've been doing cryotherapy for almost 10 years. I've had Wim Hof on the show and done a lot of ice bathing. In fact, I once got 15% of my body covered in ice burns from using ice packs. So don't make that mistake. But yeah, they're very powerful. But for most people, it's overkill. All you have to do at the end of your shower, turn the water on cold, make it hit you in the forehead and in the chest, and do it for 1 minute. You won't make it the first day unless you're already trained in this stuff. You'll make it for about 10 seconds. The next day, you'll make it for 30 seconds. You'll swear Dave Asprey's a jerk. Third day, you might make it a minute. But after 3 days, the levels of cardiolipin in your mitochondrial membrane will shift according to the studies. And the fourth day, you'll go, oh my God, it feels so good. Like I just got endorphins. This is great. So it's 3 days of hell in the morning. And after that, you just do this every day. You burn more calories. You feel really good. And you get most of the benefits of the ice bath. You still should do ice baths sometimes. I have the cryo chamber downstairs with liquid nitrogen, chilled air down to 100 or 270 below zero.
How hard is it to take that? Is it really uncomfortable?
It's actually easier than an ice bath, much easier. It's like going outside in winter wearing shorts, but you just walk to the car. It's not that big of a deal. If you're going to stand out there for a half hour, it would really be a problem. So the ROI on a 3-minute cryotherapy is pretty good compared to a 20-minute ice bath.
Do you think it makes sense to try one in one of those like the centers here? They have cryotherapy centers.
We have it at Upgrade Labs. I mean, I'll swing on by. We'll toss you in there.
I'm right here. I'm in Beverly Hills. I live in Beverly Hills here.
Definitely, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm really looking to get myself. What about I know I could go with you all day, buddy. I swear I could just keep going because this is really, as you can tell, it's really interesting to me personally.
It's fun stuff, right?
Yeah, it just is. And what any other in terms of mental cognitive function to improve memory?
Well, we haven't really talked too much about nootropics and smart drugs. And
Let's talk
I've
about
formulated
that.
some for Bulletproof, but one of the things I think you might really like is called aniracetam. Aniracetam. And aniracetam is a member of the piracetam family. And even Dirk and Sandy, we talked about earlier, they were talking about piracetam way back in the 70s. This is a drug that's been around since about the 1950s that's good for oxygen in the brain and makes your brain work better. But aniracetam, it actually increases memory I/O. It's the only one that does that. It also reduces anxiety a little bit. And I've been on aniracetam every day for
Prescription or over the counter?
It's over the counter. You kind of have to find it on the internet. They keep, it's not illegal, but it's not approved either. Even though Sandoz Pharmaceuticals manufactures it and it's been around forever, it's one of those things in the US we like to pretend it doesn't exist. So you can buy it, various websites out there, and there's not a high risk of getting fake aniracetam. It's, $25 a bottle maybe. So it's not a high risk of counterfeiting. And what you end up with, you take that stuff and things come into your memory better. They come out of your memory better. And it's pretty powerful. And I like to stack that with something called phenylpiracetam, which is more ampy. You'll really like that stuff. It's on the Olympic list of banned substances because it gives you a lot of energy, but it's also a cognitive enhancer. And then there's other stuff.
Every day or just occasionally?
I do phenylpiracetam about maybe 3-4 times a week. Depends on what I'm doing that day. Right, let's see, this morning I didn't take it, but I took a bunch of other experimental stuff. So,
what about the stuff like they use, like this stuff on TV they advertise, like with the commercial? Hey, that this new, the jellyfish, what's it called? Proveganus?
Oh, I've seen that stuff. That looks like complete BS to me.
Nonsense, right?
It's nonsense. And there's another type of thing that might work for you, but it might not. And this is stuff that's been around since the 70s. And, there's all kinds of names, alpha this and, brain that and stuff. They're all basically things that increase a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. And
Huperzine A or vinpocetine?
Yep, those are in there. And it turns out huperzine inhibits your body's ability to break down this neurotransmitter. And then you start taking stuff like alpha GPC that increases levels. And here's the problem. Pesticides, where you spray a bug and it starts twitching, that's because it's
Anthocetylcholinesterase.
Too much acetylcholine, right?
Yeah. It's nerve gas, basically. It's like VX gas, basically.
It is.
Yeah, it basically is in high enough concentration. And, it basically inhibits acetylcholinesterase. It stops the breakdown of a your brain goes crazy and overfires.
You nailed it, Jordan. So people are getting jaw tension, muscle tension, like, I'm going to take my brain. So it's okay to take a little bit of those. Most of those are way too strong, especially if you're under 35. You don't need that. So the stuff that I do is called Smart Mode, and I'm not trying to sell people on this at all, but I put a little bit of substrate. It's called CDP choline, which is a different form that isn't quite as jerky, and I don't stop the breakdown of acetylcholine naturally. And for most people, I think that's a better combination. But you go to wherever you like to buy vitamins, there'll be a whole row of these things, and there's a bunch of ones with celebrity endorsements, but they're all basically carbon copies of the same thing: raise acetylcholine. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily what's going to make your brain work better. But if you try something like that and it works, that's great. If not, you could put a scoop of sunflower lecithin or a raw egg yolk in your Bulletproof coffee and get your choline that way, and you're good to go.
Got it. Tell me, so with this living to 180, is it like something that you picked that number? Why? Was there like a reason for that number?
It's because it's 50% better than the current best.
Okay.
And the reason I think 50% is real, and something you mentioned earlier in the show, like, I don't feel like I'm old. It turns out that if you were to go back to the 60s and 70s, and you asked when someone was an elderly person, 65, you were elderly. And about 20 years ago, 30 years ago in the 90s, people who were 65 started getting offended. And they said, you know what, screw you. I'm not elderly. I can still work. I can do what I want. So in Japan and in the US, different studies used one of these, a dynamometer. It measures your grip strength. And you can tell someone's old because their grip gets weak. Turns out old people don't have weak hands the way they used to because they aren't aging the way they used to. We have problems with diabetes and Alzheimer's and all that sort of stuff. But now the definition of elderly, because based on the data, it's actually now 75 instead of 65. That already happened very recently in the course of humanity. So we just got 10 years that we didn't see. before we're now, considered to be decrepit and all that. And the picture of aging that I want people to walk away from, the real reason I wrote Superhuman, is in the first chapter. And it's that we need a lot more elders. We need wisdom right now. And if our older people are tired, their brains don't work, and they're unable to care for themselves, and they don't have the energy to give back, that fourth F word we talked about, when they're supposed to be doing it, well, we set up the world that way, and that's a problem. What I'm talking about is you're 170 years old, and you're moving around under your own power. Your brain works just fine, thank you very much, and you have an active life, and you're giving back. But now you've seen how screwed up people are for 150 years, and you know how to fix it. And you know how to tell the next generation and the generation after that, hey, here's where the bodies are buried. Here's what's going to happen. Yeah, the last time those fastest tried to do that, we saw them. In fact, we saw them 3 times. This is just another cycle. Here's how to avoid the cycles. And you're never going to throw plastic in the ocean because you know damn well you're going to eat it later. So we need people who are going to live a long time so we can actually become good stewards of society and of the planet. And you've got to do it. And the fact that I've got dozens of things in there that 20% here, 30% there, 90% here. It is possible. It is happening. And I'm not the only one saying it. These are real university scientists doing real research for decades who are coming out of the woodwork saying, we solved this problem. So we are within a couple years, maybe 5 years.
Do you think that there's, do you think there's a monumental breakthrough that it jumps from, like, whether it's in our life or a kid's life, where it goes from, like, we stop aging, like they've actually stopped the process of aging? Is it possible? Or slowed it down to the point where it's like people could live 500 years and 700 years? And
we're very close, way closer than people want to think. And all we have to do is get to the point where we add 1.1 years for every year that you live. And they call that escape velocity. And we're right on the cusp of it. And it's more important than Moore's Law. And it's more important than almost anything you can think of. And like everything else, it's going to happen for ultra rich people first. It's just how it is. And that's okay. And the reason that's okay is because someone has to fund the research. And if you have $10 billion, because $1 billion just isn't enough anymore, if you're Austin Powers, what else matters? You can buy anything you want. You can have a bigger jet or whatever, but you want more time, you're going to put all your money into it. And that's what the big money is really doing. And that research flows downhill. And that means the fact that I did, went to Salt Lake and did my 6 hands, whole body stem cell makeover where 3 doctors work for 4 hours pulling bone marrow and putting stem cells everywhere in my body they can. That's the cost of a Tesla today, right? But will you still have to pay the doctors to do that? Yes, you will. It's always, you want the best people on earth injecting you. But is the cost of stem cell technology going to drop dramatically and become more effective? Yes. It's going to just keep getting better and better and better.
I've been thinking about doing. You think I should do the stem cell thing? That whole.
Go see Dr. Harry Adelson at Docere. He's been on the show a few times. Just did a documentary on stem cells. I sent my parents to go see him. I've seen him several times, and yeah, they literally put stem cells every joint in my body, inside my spinal cord, inside my spinal fluid, face, hair, male reproductive organs, pretty much everywhere you can have them. I've had them.
Could you give me that? Where's that? How do I get that information? Because I want to do this. I've been really,
Docere, DOCERE clinics in Salt Lake. I'll email you or something. I'll hook you up with Harry.
Yeah, please. Dave, I really am intrigued by this, and I want to get more involved in this whole movement. And I have a lot of knowledge to offer it, and I think, and also money to invest in this to help with research and stuff. I think it's, at the end of the day, I think it's like the most important thing. I really do. Do you think there's a breakthrough though? Like, do you think there's is there a moment when someone's like, we've cracked the code on how to reprogram the cells? Or is it that? And there's 2 sides to it, I think. I think there's all the things that you're talking about. And then there's simply the genetic reprogramming of the cells from the telomere perspective. And all of the...
telomeres are easy. Those are already hacked. I'm not even worried about that. Liz Parrish has done some work on retroviruses you can inject that will increase your telomeres, and I'm chatting with her about doing that. But the Russians figured out in 2001, there's $50 injections you can take. You inject them for 10 days once a year. It's a peptide, and the peptide radically lengthens your telomeres.
Have you done that?
Of course. And Here's the problem, though. If you lengthen your telomeres, you increase the growth rate of your tissues, which increases your risk of cancer. So what do you do to reverse that? You take care of your mitochondria, because cancer is mostly a mitochondrial disease. So if you want tissues that grow like a young person, then you need to do things to get rid of your old cells. And you want to do things like NAD and coenzyme Q10 and things. So you balance it out.
That was another big one. Coenzyme Q10 was a big one of Dirk and Sandy Pearson.
They're right.
And quercetin, I think, was another big one they were recommending.
Yep. Those are so well studied at this point. In fact, a lot of the modern anti-aging people are looking at quercetin as a particularly effective senescent cell remover. So there's protocols where you take a pharmaceutical and quercetin, and it makes your cells get rid of the zombie cells, one of those 7 pillars of aging I talked about.
Before I started doing NAD patches, and I first had to take a 3-month regimen of something that actually got rid of what are they called? The zombie cells? You call them
They're called senescent cells.
Yeah, senescence. Yeah. I like zombie better, right? And I did it for 3 months because you said you want to get rid of those before you go on the NAD.
Yeah. So you're getting good care. Is what that means.
And you have to keep doing that, or you do it once and that's it, or you got to keep doing that again and again.
I would do it periodically. I mean, if you want to get really into the anti-aging stuff, you can do things like rapamycin for inhibiting mTOR. You can run protocols with apigenin, which is stronger than quercetin. And it's something that I use as a cognitive enhancer, but it turns out it also burns through these cells. What you're going to find over the next few years is there's a whole wave of these incredible custom-tailored peptides and other compounds coming through. We're using machine learning and artificial intelligence to figure out which ones work best, whether it's nutrient-based or drug-based. And now we're finally looking at aging as a disease. So I know 2 different companies that have 5 or 6 major switches about to be solved, where they can say, this is why your skin gets thin. Done. This is why your hair is falling out. Done. And they're doing it at a very deep genetic cellular level. And it's not a drug. These are interventions that are changing cell biology. And it's awesome. And this is the future right now. We're living in it, and we all look backwards and say, it's always been this way. The world's going to get real exciting in the next 5 years.
How long do our kids live?
It depends on where they live, right?
With access to the right information.
With access to the right information, there is no reason. Okay, assuming we don't run out of topsoil in 60 years. Okay, that's a big issue. So assuming environmentally that we start putting animals back on the planet so they can poop and make dirt, which is what we need. So we assume that we do that and that we don't have enough environmental catastrophe that you just can't live that long. Then a couple hundred years is very, very reasonable. And we can replace parts. We can 3D print parts. I just had a guy on the show who can grow you a new liver inside your own lymph nodes so that you won't reject it biologically. We have the ability to, in fact, I'm going to go to Thailand once all the travel restriction stuff is done. They can get some of your skin and turn it into stem cells that are de-differentiated, that can turn into anything. It's not cheap, but it's happening right already, right now. And what's it going to look like in 5 years? It's only but getting better and better and better.
Love it. Wow, you are a really interesting man. And this is one of my favorite podcasts I think I've ever done. I've done some really great guests, but this is really one of my best ones, I think, at least for me. Hope everyone else liked it. I loved it.
I had no idea that you knew all this stuff. I mean, your questions are very nuanced. You know what you're talking about. I'm going to have you on my show now.
Yeah, sure. No, I think people always, they look at the movie and they see it one-sided. I'm a bit more complex than I think most people realize. And I think all people are more complex than you realize. I think it's just because my one side of me was so portrayed that's, and that's okay, And from there, I start my journey when I speak to people. I guess they hopefully will realize that I have bit more than just being a great salesman, no doubt. But I'm a bit more learned than that.
It's good storytelling to tell a movie, and very, very few of the things you read in the media are particularly accurate. And once you've been in the media, at least
I don't bother me anymore. I know if you let it bother you nowadays, whoa,
it's nuts. I do though want to say it's amazing. A few times I've sit down at a table full of billionaires. And I'm not a billionaire by a long shot, but I pull out my little bag of vitamins and they all look around and go, "Oh, I've got one too." Okay. If you go back 10 years or 20 years, and I have a long career in Silicon Valley, maybe they weren't billionaires back then. They were just, centimillionaires. But when you look back then, they looked at me like I was like from another planet, right? All of the people of means, the power executives, the celebrities, the professional athletes, top level software developers, they're all taking their supplements. They're all paying attention to this stuff because the ROI in their careers is so high. So you're not alone. You're just a very early adopter. And I would argue that, that even though you've lived pretty hard for part of your life, that the fact you have this knowledge and you've been using it for a while is probably why you have some of the success you have today and the brain you have today.
Interesting. What about the idea of having a life extension coach, like a longevity coach? Like we have coaches for everything, but I think right now I feel my first instinct was I want to hire someone to be my longevity coach, because I think that there's so much information out there that it's cost effective for me not to have to research it all myself. I'd rather seek out one person that's a total expert in that field. Is that a doctor or a coach? Question.
That's a really perceptive question. What's happening now is that very few doctors, even the very, very best functional medicine doctors, they can diagnose weird things because they've seen the pattern before. But AI is getting so good that if you just spend 2 hours on Google, you can usually dial it. You just get in and say, you know what? I'm pretty sure I know about what I'm dealing with. You go and you talk to an expert.
The highest use of Watson, right? That's Watson's highest use, is diagnosing patterns based on massive amounts of information. That's what they use it for.
In fact, one of the companies I'm invested in, called the DNA company, is actually partnered with Watson on functional genomics, right? And so they can look in and go, oh, that's what's going on, and it's fascinating. If you look though at what your doctor's role is, if you have a concierge doctor and a functional medicine doctor, they are your coach. So the idea of a doctor is the source of knowledge. No doctor knows what the internet knows. So they're fantastic sources of knowledge, and they're your partner, they're your collaborator, right? And they're your coach. And so what you want to do is you want to find a concierge medicine, functional medicine practice, which means you pay them whatever they charge per month, and you have a monthly call with them, and they're your coach.
Yeah, I have that.
The Human Performance Institute, I have 1,000+ coaches, but most of them aren't doctors. These are people who teach you how to be bulletproof. But there's a level where you are, where you're saying, I need to get my labs and I need to be able to get a prescription for this. You want a doctor. You really do.
Yeah. I think it's more integrative. It's an integrative approach. And I think at some level, the only thing that most doctors is that they somewhat, the good ones don't, but many of them get not brainwashed, but they get myopic because of, going through traditional Western medicine. They make you think a certain way. And I think a lot of the ways that, I think it's changing now, far for the better. As specialists, you learn more and more about less and less. And I think that's the exact opposite of what you need for something like that, such a multidisciplinary solution where there's just so many different systems and things happening. I don't really think it's about that. I think it's almost being about a jack of all trades on some level and finding the masters of those few key ones to come up with a strategy that really is perfect for you. I think it's that's the sort of solution maybe.
The two groups you want to go to, the people who are certified by the IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine, or A4M, the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. People who've had training and certifications from those two are almost universally going to be able to go, let's look at the system of you instead of these strict functional things.
Yeah.
There's naturopaths versus chiropractors versus medical doctors. Medical doctors generally have more privileges to write you stuff, but sometimes they can be more hidebound. In my experience, some of the very best people, it doesn't matter. What it matters is how many decades of experience do they have and how do they think. So you get someone with 20 years of experience working on tough stuff. They're going to have special powers. And at this point in your life, you can afford someone with special powers. Do that.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, listen, I would love to be on your show one day if you want that. I'm happy to do that. But this is really great. And everybody, Dave Asprey, wow. It's going to change my life. I was already on this road, but now I'm firmly on this road. I'm going to be taking action tonight. I really think everybody should check out Dave's stuff. What's the best place for them to find your stuff?
Go to daveasprey.com. It's got links to everything, Bulletproof Radio, and I'm always on Instagram and Facebook.
Brilliant. I will be there myself tonight, that's for sure, right after this, in fact. Dave, thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it. You're great, really great, inspirational, and a gift to humanity. Seriously.
Thank you, Jordan. Have a great night.
Take care, man. Thanks. Bye. All right, here's the deal. As America gets back to work, you want and need every possible advantage out there to succeed in the new economy. Smart companies run on NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud-based business system. So receive your free guide right now at netsuite.com/wolf. That is netsuite.com/wolf. All right, real quick, listen, if you're a CEO, you're a sales manager, or you're involved in hiring for your company, I want you to check out my new organization, Straight Line Hiring. What we do is we deliver expertly trained salespeople to companies like yours. World-class salespeople trained by me and delivered to you on demand. Go to my website, jordanbelfort.com. Check out Straight Line Hiring, the only way to grow your company with certainty.